Hello, and welcome back to another Elevated Marketing Dot podcast. On today's show, we're going to talk about something that is, really important with your marketing. Really understanding what your brand messaging is. So, with me, I have Brenna, and I am Jennifer Denny, and we are part of Elevated Marketing Solutions. Woohoo!
Elevator.
Yep, yep. So tell us, Brenna, like, what do we mean when we're talking about brand messaging? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. Well, I think a good question to maybe start with when you're trying to develop this brand messaging is how do you want your audience to perceive your brand? And
Mhm.
so there's going to be some keywords that maybe you focus on. Like for us, we're going to focus on data, results, solutions, strategy. And so it's really finding messaging that's tailored to your brand specifically, what you believe in, what you're offering, but meeting your audience where they are to help align that focus.
Yeah. And sometimes people have a brand messaging problem because, people come to them and they're just not really sure what you do.
Hmm.
Like they don't know who you do it for, they don't know why it matters, and they don't know how you are different. And that's really your value prop in the market. Why are you valuable?
Yep, for sure. And even what problems are you solving? A lot of
Hmm.
people may not even know that they have some of these pain points. And so if your brand messaging can call that out, then it might open up a whole new perspective for them. And then that's going to bring trust and so on and so forth.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know why I go back to this a lot. Is sometimes I see this with industries that are repeatable, like even a marketing agency, or even a plumber or a heating and air company. Like, there are a lot of choices when it comes to that, and if you don't have a strong brand message, then people don't know why to choose you over the guys down the street.
For sure. And I think there's a lot of competitiveness. There's always has been, but like
Mhm.
now, right now, I think there's a lot kind of at stake in terms of remaining competitive, and your brand messaging is really how you can one up.
Yeah, yeah. So another part of brand messaging is what's called positioning, and where you fit and why you stand out. And so there's several different things that kind of go into your positioning. What would you say those are?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but how you're speaking on pain points. So um, it definitely very specific to your services or your products. But it's again, how are you solving these pain points, but also calling out what those pain points might be.
Mhm, mhm. What price point can you justify? So part of your positioning is trying to figure out what your cost should be.
Mhm.
Sometimes you are at the top of the market and sometimes you are at the bottom, and there's nothing wrong with being at the bottom and being a less, I don't you wouldn't want to use the words cheap or cheaper or more valuable,
Mhm.
more value. And then you've got what you might call your high end, where your prices are up there. So,
Yeah. And I think with all of those, and especially with your positioning, that competitor analysis is really important. You
yeah.
have to know what Johnny down the street is doing in order to not only help your positioning, but just to give those subtle boosts of why you.
Hmm. So, the next items that kind of go into that is like brand voice and tone, and it's how you sound when you communicate. Words matter,
Mhm.
and your voice is consistent across, no matter what type of marketing you're talking about, but your tone could be slightly different depending on the situation or the problem.
Yeah, and I think this is where you can really let your personality shine through, personality of your brand rather. Now we definitely want to see personality of who's working for you, who you are.
Mhm.
And that all definitely kind of goes hand in hand here with that brand tone and voice. But definitely, this is where the magic happens, I think, for a lot of these messaging needs.
Yeah. It's how you come across to people.
Mhm.
That's basically the layman's term of how I describe tone is, are you authoritative or are you fun? Like,
Maybe you're
what
a teddy bear.
maybe you're just easy to work with. That is also tone. So this all can come down to kind of 3 to 5 core messages that you use everywhere,
Mhm.
and it's repeated, and when people hear that over and over, then they really understand what your brand is all about.
Mhm. Yeah, it definitely helps with that brand consistency, but I think you had just said it too, just that overall brand awareness, and it's creating that sense of familiarity. So when they see these messages, they're gonna know, "Oh, well, that's Elevated Marketing Solutions."
Yeah, yeah. So, like, if you tie all those together, it's like the value prop is the headline, the hook, the positioning is how you describe that to describe your service in a way that, no one else can. Voice and tone builds that emotional connection
Mhm.
with your audience, and then the messaging pillars are kind of the building blocks to every one of those single touch points that you have with someone.
For sure, and I don't think that with these messages, like, I mean, they certainly shouldn't be just glazed over. It definitely takes a lot of, I think, thinking,
Mhm.
or to come up with messaging that you truly feel like aligns with your brand, but
Yeah.
also will align with your audience.
Well, I think too, like, companies evolve in their brand messaging. I think sometimes they start off with one way, and as they evolve as a company, their brand message starts to evolve. Now, I don't think you're gonna get too far from your roots, but when you first get into business, sometimes you're not really sure what your messaging is, and you
Mhm.
kinda discover it along the way.
Yeah, I think you're totally right on that. It definitely could change over time.
Yeah, yeah. Eh, you know, I think it's really important though, because if people are confused about who you are, what you stand for, and how you help them, then they're not going to convert because they're not going to understand why they should buy your product or service.
For sure. And that consistency needs to be throughout, not only your marketing efforts, but also in your sales efforts as well. I know we've talked many times about how marketing and sales go hand in hand, and this is
Yeah.
just another one of those cases where they absolutely do.
Well, you can tell sometimes we've talked about customer service too. Like, I can tell when I go to customer service or I go to, the next department that there is a brand there, but if they're not all speaking the same language and they
Mhm.
don't understand what the core values are and they don't understand what you stand for, then you've got a problem, and you have a brand, but it's confusing to the end person.
Yeah, it just gets a little bit lost in translation if everyone is not on the same page.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's super important. It will make or break sales, and it's definitely something you should work on.
Yeah, yeah, and it definitely fuels almost every aspect of what you're putting your time and energy into. Um, it's all about creating that consistency and just bringing that through.
All right. Well, if you don't have a brand, remember you do. You're just not sure what it is.
Oh, time to find it.
All right. Well, that's it for today's show. If you enjoyed today's show, certainly hand over to elevatedmarketing.solutions, or you can follow me, Jennifer Denny, on LinkedIn. All right, take care.